Next, we will hear from Alison, who is from Canada, from Vancouver. Alison is the coordinator of the Fire This Time movement for social justice and Venezuela Solidarity campaign in Vancouver, Canada. She's also the author of the book Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Venezuela and is a founding member of Solidarity Network, which is based in Canada and the US. Alison was in Venezuela in September 2024 and actually participated as an electoral observer in one of the recent communal popular consultation processes, which she will be speaking with us about today. Sen, thanks so much again for being with us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Reagan. I'll just put my book here while after you announced it. Thanks for announcing it. There'll be information in the chat if anyone would like a copy. So yeah, I'm really grateful to be joining here from Vancouver, Canada, from Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice and the Venezuela Solidarity Network, to everyone's time, to everyone's patience. So there's lots of international folks here. I see people actually joining from, Cuba, Venezuela. Technology is not always our friend, but really the webinars and our opportunity to connect more across borders and to work towards building an international movement in defense of the Bolivarian revolutionary process and Venezuela's right to self-determination is an opportunity that we have to take hold of as, people that are interested in building a better world. So I really appreciate Reagan and everyone that pulled together to organize this webinar. My fellow speakers, Anna and Sira, thank you for helping set the context of what we're talking about today, building people's power in Venezuela, which is a system very unfamiliar, of course, to people living in imperialist capitalist countries, the United States, Canada, Britain. We can't even begin to imagine the grassroots democracy that Venezuela is building, except to observe it from the outside. It's something we don't really see in action at all in the countries in which we live. So it can take a minute to wrap our heads around this level of community organization, solidarity, all of these things. And that brings me to what I really think is important, which is to say that as people living in imperialist countries that are attacking Venezuela, the US, Canada, Britain, Europe, how important it is that we get the opportunity to visit Venezuela, to see Venezuela for ourselves. And I cannot be more than grateful to Venezuelans across all sectors of, working class society in Venezuela, from people working in the Venezuelan government to those in the communes movement, who have hosted us and given us the opportunity to see their daily realities and continue to, put the effort into our work together. So I was an international observer at the second national popular consultation communal election, which was held in August of 2024 and August 25th of 2024. These communal elections have continued since then, and ones took place before then. But this was an especially powerful experience to observe an election that's part of building people's power that we've been discussing here today. And to be able to see Venezuela's communes movement from this perspective, after visiting communes, learning about the basics of how they operate, of course, only a handful of them, and all of them have their different characteristics. Seeing an election was a very interesting time for me as a revolutionary socialist and someone interested in building a better world. And it's also was really impactful to be in Venezuela, actually less than 30 days from the 2024 Venezuelan presidential election, where I was also an international observer. So that was on July 28th of 2024. And so when I left Venezuela in late July, the election had been won by President Nicolas Maduro, and the Bolivarian revolutionary process was set to continue in the form of the government of Venezuela. But this had set off a wave of US-backed right-wing opposition violence. Public institutions and community projects of the Bolivarian Revolution were being attacked. Chavistas were mobilizing in the streets in mass numbers to defend themselves and to confront the provocateurs and defeat this destabilization attempt that had flipped into motion as soon as the victory of President Maduro was declared. And that was happening in Venezuela when I left. We left, as scheduled, but with additional security, hey, we need to get these international observers out of the country because the US is really attempting to destabilize something here. And then I came back less than 30 days later, landed in the airport, and already you could feel the less tension. When we left, there was a lot of tension. When we arrived, it was already different because for the previous 30 days, Chavistas, supporters of the Bolivarian revolutionary process, of course, alongside Venezuelan security forces, but really this mass mobilization had defeated this destabilization attempt. And the election taking place in the communes was an extension of this defeat. It was to show, hey, we're going to continue with our grassroots democracy. We've defeated your right-wing violence, and we are going to continue to build the Bolivarian revolution, in this context. So on August 25th of 2024, the 4,500 communes that Anna was explaining about and kind of gave us an idea of their basic structure went to vote on community projects that they wanted to fund in the coming months. This included development projects related to infrastructure such as roads, water systems, electricity, housing, transportation initiatives like a communal transport van or a truck, or the development of communal production programs, really everything related to social development in this smaller community, organized community within Venezuelan society. The International Observers Delegation to the second National Popular Consultation communal election was over 100 people from 28 different countries. And the group that I traveled with included people from the United States, Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia, and Egypt. We visited a state that's actually in the northeast of Venezuela. It was my first time to be outside of the states directly touching Caracas, the capital city. It is in the northeast. It's called Anzoátegui. And it is the region we visited, although it's not only a coastal state, was really the coastal region of the state. And it was really an opportunity for this group of 10 of us to carry out a visit in a different community to understand the depth of the revolution just a little bit more. We spent only one day in this community, but we traveled to many different areas. And basically, the point of the visit was to observe the election, but to give space for an exchange for us to talk with the people organized in their communities. The level of consciousness and level of organization we were able to observe really showed us what is some of the motor running below that has enabled the people of Venezuela to last for over 25 years under constant attacks, blockades, sanctions, destabilization attempts, violence, led by the United States and other imperialist countries. And this was a very special opportunity. So I'm going to just share a few slides to hopefully give people an idea of what that looked like. This was the delegation that we had. We were really fortunate to be accompanied by someone who is now a vice minister of communes in the Bolivarian revolutionary government, Jose Cifuentes. Sorry, I probably got his last name a little wrong. I'll look it up. Who we were very lucky to travel with. It's him here in the center. And we spent time visiting 3 different communities. The first stop was in the comuna La Sirena de Guanta. And in this commune, like all the others, our visit began with them explaining their projects, what they are working on in the community, and then going through the voting process. Basically, the truck that you can see behind me was a project that was funded through the last public consultation. The community voted they needed a truck to transport families around, to help with people moving, to help with reconstruction or construction projects. And they funded this communal truck. And so we were learning about that. And then we learned about the vote that was happening that day. And all the communities that we visited, there was a list posted of projects that had been already, discussed and democratically decided that they would be on the list, that were part of the vote. So are people going to work towards, the improvement of the water system in Cerro Oriente, part of the community? Are they going to put in lighting posts in a different sector? What is the most important project? Are they going to improve a child daycare center? What is the most important project that needs funding in this community? And the result of the previous vote had been around this Barrio Adentro Center, which I just wanted to highlight because this is the result of a cooperative project between the government of Cuba and that of Venezuela, working to build community health centers. There are 2 Cuban doctors working in this health clinic, and the community had decided during the last round of consultations to fund the renovation of the health center to give it a better air conditioning system, a new coat of paint, and have it better serve the community. So we learned about this project and talked with members of the communal council about the process of voting. We then visited another community and had the opportunity to visit the Bolivar municipality of Barcelona. And this is Puerto La Cruz, which is the Comuna Socialista Bahía de Pozuelos en Revolución. And this was a vote that was taking place in this area. There are 22 communes in this municipality. But here we were welcomed with, fiery chanting of people in defense of their sovereignty and self-determination, people who wanted to explain to us the process of the popular consultation in the context of building a grassroots democracy and really working people in Venezuela deciding their future. So this was another example of the voting that was taking place. This community was deciding what they wanted to fund again. So are we going to do another, child care center? Are we going to work on a productive project? And the voting centers, were busy, they were relaxed, there wasn't, heavy security around. Keeping in mind, 30 days before, actually the town hall of this community had all of the front windows broken by right-wing opposition protesters. So this community had reclaimed its peace through organization. Then we visited a final area. This was the Bolivar municipality of Barcelona. The voting center here was also, busy, people of all ages voting, people as young as 15 voted in this election. That was the voting age for this election. And they, were waiting in line and waiting for the rain. So luckily they had a covered area. And just to share a very brief story about this voting center, in talking to voters here, people were not surprised by the weather. Apparently it rains like this in Anzoátegui quite frequently, like afternoon thunderstorms. The skies were really looking like they were going to open up. There was a double rainbow. But this, one of the voters explained to me how on voting days, in fact, it always rains. And it reminds him of the spirit of Chavez, who in one of his last speeches before passing away, people have probably seen those famous photos, was speaking underneath a rainstorm. And so he said, if it rains when when we're voting, that means the spirit of Chavez is with us. And then this is another list in this community. So you can see the lists are very different. They're related to the specific concrete problems that the community is facing. And they're looking to help organize which projects are going to happen first through voting, through consulting with the members of that commune, of that community. And just to give people an idea of the scope of the projects, in Anzoátegui, the government, the federal, the state government of all of Venezuela, the Bolivarian Revolutionary Government, was offering $10,000 to fund each project. And then the state government of Anzoátegui was doubling that. So each project in this state was going to receive a $20,000 funding. And if that project was successfully completed in a certain period, there was more funding available for them to move on to the next project that was voted upon. So we had finished our day, our third visit here, and I'll just very briefly flip through photos that have the information about, or that show the voting process. If people haven't been able to participate in an election in Venezuela, the important things to know are that people are registered to vote. They use their ID cards, which every Venezuelan has. A big gain of the Bolivarian revolutionary process was to give everyone the right to vote. To similar to Cuba, a massive literacy campaign was launched to make sure people were literate, could have the ability to make educated votes, and were also given ID cards. And so this happened in this state of Anzoátegui, and people, the voting is staffed by people who are members of the community. There's a process of checking IDs, signing to register your vote, and putting your vote in a box that will be counted. So these are people voting, lining up. You can see it's like a relaxed atmosphere. It's communal, but it's also secret and done in a way that people's votes are protected. And this is just one final photo of us in a meeting with Unión Comuneras and kind of closing out our time. So those are the photos that I wanted to share today, and to describe a little bit of what it was like to be in Anzoátegui, to be part of this communal election, to see Venezuela for myself. But I want to close by really giving urgency to everyone here about the importance to be involved in solidarity with Venezuela. There's a continuous onslaught of misinformation, disinformation, attacks on the Bolivarian Revolution and the democratically elected government of President Maduro. Of course, to no one's surprise, this has increased, changed character, but is intensifying under U.S. president, despite the different maybe tactics or maneuvering of the U.S. government at this time. They still intend to attempt to overthrow the Bolivarian revolutionary process and the government of Venezuela. We must build a more united and stronger solidarity movement, which is what we're working towards with the Venezuela Solidarity Network, which I helped found and which was introduced in the chat a few minutes ago. And that means building a strong movement in defense of Venezuela's right to self-determination, the right to determine their own destiny, and the right to the Bolivarian revolutionary process. And this movement must be strong and effective, in other words, robust. The Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution and defending its independence gives us, as people living in the United States or Canada or Britain, an opportunity, really a golden opportunity for progressives, leftists, socialists, revolutionaries, human-loving activists to really overcome the fragmentation that has existed so long in the left within different solidarity movements, and issue a call to unite around Venezuela in defense of Venezuela against US-led imperialist attacks. And that is why we formed the Venezuela Solidarity Network, and that is why we are also very happy to be working with Rock Around the Blockade and the Revolutionary Communist Group who within the Venezuela Solidarity Network. This means, across all of our countries, concrete actions, handing out information, petitioning, cultural events, bringing people from Venezuela to Canada, the United States, or Britain, which has become difficult. I'm sure it's the same in Britain, but basically nearly impossible for Venezuelans to get visas given the break in diplomatic relations between these countries. But I think it's something we should still strive for. However, there are ample opportunities, as today demonstrates, to make the Venezuelan revolutionary process and defense of Venezuela a working class issue. And so this also means, and our work must also include conferences, webinars, anything that can bring the case of Venezuela to working people. And this work, of course, has been redoubled with the new Trump administration and their attacks against independent countries in Latin America and Venezuela. Because I really think and have observed that people in Venezuela, led by democratically elected President Maduro and their grassroots organization and movement, are really extremely capable of dealing with all kinds of internal counter-revolutionary sabotage. They are taking care of their work of building a world as they see in Venezuela, and we have to take care of our work as people living in the United States, Canada, or Britain, which is defending Venezuela and ending imperialist attacks on Venezuela. I think imperialism is deeply threatened by the gains of the Bolivarian process, and the more independent, revolutionary Venezuela becomes, the more it threatens the military domination and imperialist soft powers in Latin America. And the more it also gives us an opportunity to organize the working class in defense of Venezuela. The US attempt at hegemony over the international markets and natural resources throughout Latin America is going to continue. But Venezuela, and this is why Venezuela's independent government is a threat to imperialism, because it really is a source for poor and an inspiration for poor and working people in other countries in Latin America who want to nationalize resources, redistribute land, organize their communities, and make sure that the basic human rights to food, water, housing, education, and health are provided to all. The strengthening of anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist movements across Latin America, which are inspired by the people's power we're talking about in Venezuela today, has created a huge fear and anxiety among imperialist governments. So I want to appeal to people and close by saying that the most important way we can help our compañeros and compañeras in Venezuela is by working here in the United States, in Europe, in Canada, in Britain, to push these countries to drop all sanctions against Venezuela and end their campaign of aggression, sabotage, and threats of war. So I'm calling on all of us here to redouble our efforts to build a movement, a robust, effective, strong movement in defense of the Venezuelan people, demanding US, Canada, hands off Venezuela, end the blockade. And that's where I want to close today. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alison. Yes, I mean, spot on. Thank you for sharing your experience in Venezuela about visiting communes, getting to witness the participatory democracy that you're right, we could not even really begin to from within imperialist Britain or the US or Canada, and the importance of our work in solidarity with Venezuela, defending the Bolivarian Revolution, and demanding that our governments and their onslaught, imperialist onslaught on Venezuela. Just for the sake of time, we'll move